So let's begin. Hi everyone, and welcome to the PayFit Q&A session. Today's session is around the latest payroll changes leading on from the COVID-19 outbreak. So I'm Nichola and I work at PayFit as a product legal advisor, and I'm hosting the session today. We're going to take a look at some of the questions that you guys have submitted to us ahead of the session. But if there's something that we've not covered, we do have time at the end if you want to submit any questions in the Q&A box on the Zoom menu. So the first thing that we're going to look at is the hot topic of furlough workers and the job retention scheme. So just a little bit of background for those who aren't sure. The job retention scheme is the new scheme being introduced by the government to minimise the likelihood of employers having to make redundancies or layoffs whilst businesses are impacted during the outbreak. So the job retention scheme is going to be available to all employers, and it's going to offer employers the opportunity to reclaim up to 80% of their employer costs, or a maximum of £2,500. Okay, we have a few people who have said that they can't quite hear us. Is anybody else having issues with hearing me, or can anyone confirm that they can hear me just before we proceed? Okay. Okay, if anybody is having difficulty in hearing me, maybe you could leave the meeting, then jump back in. The slides will be circulated at the end if you do miss a question. Okay, so the first question that we've had submitted is, what happens if an employee is due to start on the 1st of April and they've signed their contract already? Can I make them a furlough worker? So as of yesterday, the HMRC released some quite detailed guidance, and one of the eligibility criteria for employees is that they needed to be on the payroll on the 28th of February. Anyone who starts after this date will not be applicable for furlough leave, unfortunately. So the next question is, how do I furlough an employee? So putting an employee onto a period of furlough leave is going to require 3 main steps. So the first one is determining which employees that you will place on furlough leave. Now, not all employees need to be furloughed, just those who would have ordinarily been at risk of redundancy or being laid off. And remember that while these employees are on a period of furlough leave, they will not be able to do any work for you. So once you've identified those employees impacted, it is important to notify them of the changes to their employment. And it would be also helpful if you could confirm to them that they are still employed and that they will continue to accrue their annual leave and things like their length of service. And ACAS have also recommended that you confirm to them when the furlough leave will commence, when it will be reviewed, and how the employees can keep in touch with you during the furlough period. And the third step is making sure that you're prepared. So employees don't actually have to accept furlough if it is offered, unless of course there's something in the employee's contract already. But the alternative to this could potentially be the employee being made redundant, which is going to end their employment entirely, or laying the employee off, which is going to allow an employee to receive a maximum of £29 per day for 5 days in a 3-month period. Question 3, how do I tell the HMRC about furloughed employees? So the HMRC are currently setting up their online system for employers to submit information about furloughed workers and their earnings. So the timing around this is still to be confirmed, but it should be in place by the end of April. However, we do know that in order to make a claim to the HMRC, you will need your, excuse me, your pay as you earn reference number, the number of employees being furloughed, the start and end date of the claim period, so that's the period in which you are claiming for the furloughed employees, the amount that you are claiming, your bank account number and sort code, your contact name, and your phone number. Question 4, so how will furlough payments work? And this is one of the most asked questions that we've had. So as you will know, the HMRC have committed to reimbursing 80% of an employee's gross wage costs. This excludes commissions, bonuses and fees, but it will include any enhanced contractual pay that you might offer for the likes of maternity, paternity, adoption and shared parental leave. Now, this will either be 80% of employees' gross wage costs or £2,500, whichever is lower. In addition to this figure, the HMRC will also reimburse the costs of the employer national insurance and also the minimum employer pension contribution. So if you as an employer offer an enhanced employer pension contribution, this will not be funded. You will only be funded for the minimum 3%. Now, in addition to this, it is worth noting that the national minimum wage only applies for hours that the employee actually works. So employees who are on furlough and receiving furlough pay may receive 80% of their wages, and this may be below the national minimum wage calculations. Now, we also know now that employers can make a claim once every 3 weeks to the HMRC for reimbursement, and the HMRC will pay the employer the reimbursement via BACS. And the claim you make to the HMRC must be based on actual payroll amounts at the point that you run the payroll. We also know that because the employer is responsible for making the payments to employees during the furlough period, these payments should be made via payroll. So I do suggest, for record keeping purposes, it would be helpful to show these as separate payments to salary payments on the pay slip. With that in mind, I would recommend that you speak with your payroll software provider to understand what support they are offering. I know from a PayFit perspective, we have been waiting for clearer guidance from the HMRC on how this will be processed via the payroll to see just what we can offer our customers to best support them. So the next question is, do I need to top up employees' pay? The government have confirmed that there is no requirement to top up the employee's pay, so the employee can receive the 80% of their salary without the requirement for the employer to top up anything additional. However, if you already have something stipulated in the employment contract that you will pay a particular amount, for example, you will pay 100% of pay for periods such as this, you will have to top the employee's pay up. So question number 6, what happens if I've already terminated staff? Again, the scheme is extended to cover employees who have been made redundant since the 28th of February. If they have been rehired by the employer, they can be placed on furlough leave instead. Question 7, is there a worked example of the reimbursement of salaries under the job retention scheme, one that shows for both staff paid above and below the thresholds? Now, we haven't provided any worked examples on the slides because the employee payments are also dependent on whether or not the employee has fixed pay or has varied pay. So what we'll do after the webinar is that we're going to circulate some worked examples for you. For employees with fixed pay, their actual salary before tax as of the 28th of February is what should be used to calculate the 80%, again, excluding fees, bonuses and commissions, but including any enhanced pay for any statutory leave. Now, for employees with variable pay, What you claim depends on how long the person has been employed, so we'll make sure that the worked examples cover all of these scenarios for you. Question number 8. Now, this is a question from an employee's perspective, and this is, I've just been furloughed. What will this mean for me, and will my monthly pay be reduced to 80% minus tax, pension and national insurance? So whilst you are furloughed, you can't carry out any work for your employer. If you do have more than one job, you can continue to work for the employer so long as they haven't furloughed you. So it is possible to have 2 employments and be on a period of furlough leave for one and not the other. Now, because the HMRC are reimbursing the gross costs of your salary wage payments, they will be subject to tax and national insurance through the payroll. And in addition to this, your pension contributions will be based on qualifying earnings on the furlough payment that you receive. So question 9, we have used furlough for a number of employees now. How long can furlough be used for us to enable the full amount to be reclaimed by the HMRC? So furlough should be used for the period of time that the employee is not required to work. And the HMRC have confirmed that the minimum amount of time that an employee can be furloughed is 3 weeks. Now, if the employees are still furloughed when the government ends the scheme, the employer is going to have to make a decision as to whether or not the employer can return to work. If the employee can't return to work, the employer may need to consider an alternative, for example, following the statutory redundancy procedure. So just to recap on this question, because the minimum length for the furlough period is 3 weeks, if you furlough an employee for less than this, for example, 1 or 2 weeks, you won't be able to use the furlough scheme to reclaim salary costs. Question 10. Can a firm furloughing employees also do this for a director on pay-as-you-earn who also wants to access the grant available and help for the self-employed? Now, the guidance released yesterday does stipulate that directors who pay or receive a salary and dividends through the payroll will be covered by the job retention scheme only. So they will be able to be furloughed and the employer will be able to claim 80% of their salary costs, but they will not be able to access the self-employed income support scheme. Just a quick update on that as well. So yesterday it was announced that the government are introducing almost a like-for-like scheme for those who are self-employed, in that they will be able to claim up to 80% of their net wages, provided that they have submitted a tax return for the 18-19 tax year. Question 11. The employees that are vulnerable will be out of the company for 12 weeks. Can furlough be used for these people if they are not needed in the business? Now, employees who are on sick leave or are self-isolating can be furloughed after the period of sickness absence ends. So they can't be furloughed during the period that they are taking as self-isolation or during a sickness period. Those who are classed as or care for someone who is vulnerable, in line with the public health guidance, can be furloughed. In addition to this, employees who are on a period of statutory leave, such as maternity or adoption, can be furloughed when their leave comes to an end. So you can't end the employee's leave to furlough them. And finally, on this question, employees who are on unpaid leave on or before the 28th of February also cannot be furloughed. So if an employee has taken a period of unpaid leave from the 1st of March onwards, they can be furloughed. Question 12, can we interrupt furlough? Does it end when we need employees to return back to work? And what happens if an employee has booked a holiday during the furlough period? So the guidance on the particulars around whether or not annual leave should still be taken isn't clear. So we'll continue to monitor this for you and keep you up to date as soon as we know. What I would say though is that if an employee does take a period of annual leave, you may be required to top the employee up if this doesn't form part of the initial 80% claim that you submit to the HMRC. Now, in regards to interrupting furlough to allow an employee to return to work, the employee has to be furloughed for a minimum of 3 weeks. However, it does seem from the guidance that has been provided that they can return to normal duties and then potentially be furloughed again. Again, we'll continue to monitor any guidance around this, and if we have any further clarification, we will let you know. If you do want your staff to undertake things such as training during a period of furlough leave, they must be paid the minimum wage or the national living wage at least for the time that they've spent training. So question 13. With our branches having very little footfall, do we have to pay staff their contracted hours, or can we ask them to reduce their hours during this period? So the key word here is contracted. So if the employee's current employment contract does have the provision for the employer to reduce working hours during these such times, then there is no issue with you doing that. However, if this isn't in your employment contract and it doesn't clearly stipulate that the employer can reduce hours, you would be required to negotiate a contract change for employees. So the next topic that we're going to look at is, again, the topic that we've received a lot of questions on, given the recent changes. So from the 13th of March, it was legislated that statutory sick pay is payable from day one for those isolating due to the coronavirus, whether they have it, whether they're displaying symptoms, or whether they've been in contact with someone with the virus. Now at PayFit, we have released our COVID-19 feature, which is a new section in the app. The first thing that we have coded is that we have coded a leave type as COVID-19 related leave, and this will automate the statutory sick pay to be paid from day one. Next, we have also released a quite detailed information section for employers that will contain the information you need regarding reclaiming statutory sick pay, and also information regarding the furlough workers and the job retention scheme. And we will continue to update this for our customers as we find out more information. And the final thing that we have introduced is the report that employers can keep track of. And now this is going to detail the SSP that they are able to reclaim for those who have COVID-19 related absences. So question 1. Am I correct in thinking that the government are only paying back the SSP for self-isolation for a maximum of 2 weeks? So yes, the government have confirmed that the maximum amount that an employer can reclaim is 2 weeks per employee. Question 2. Now this is similar to question 1. My thinking is 12-week high-risk employees will be entitled to statutory sick pay. If this is correct, are the government considering paying back the 12 weeks statutory sick pay to the employers? Now the government haven't announced any intentions to do so yet, but they do update the business support pages on the gov.uk website regularly. So if this does change, we'll make sure that we update the COVID-19 page for our customers, but also the likes of our blog and the articles that we post. Question number 3. How do I best advise our employees who are not sick or high risk but have had to stay at home because of childcare issues? Are they entitled to anything? So employees who need to stay at home for childcare reasons have a few options if they don't fall into the category to self-isolate. Firstly, you could offer them a work from home alternative where they could continue to receive pay whilst working from home for you. Now, it can be difficult to work from home and balance childcare at the same time. So you could also consider offering employees flexible working hours. Now, if it is stipulated in the employment contract, the employee's pay could reduce to reflect any reduction in hours that the employee takes. But again, this must be reflected in the employment contract. In addition to this, the employee does have the right to request parental leave from you. This is unpaid unless you offer a contractual enhancement, and this is capped at 4 weeks per year per child, at a maximum of 18 weeks. Question 4. What pay are the employees who are considered high risk, who are opting to take the 12-week isolation period, entitled to? So if you have an employee who is self-isolating, they are eligible to receive statutory sick pay from day one, provided they meet the criteria. If you have a contractual sick pay scheme in your business, you can also offer this. And this will also mean that you can still claim the 2 weeks of statutory sick pay back as well. Now, if your employee doesn't qualify for statutory sick pay, they may be able to claim universal credit. Question 5. I have a staff member who is self-isolating due to an underlying condition, but we haven't received a specific letter from them to self-isolate. They are on a 0-hour contract. Will they still get paid? And if so, how? So employees who are self-isolating can self-certify for the first 7 days. Remember that SSP for self-isolation is due from day one. After this, employers are being asked to exercise discretion on what evidence they require from an employee and when. But employees can get isolation notes for day 8 onwards from the NHS website or the NHS mobile app. Now, in addition to this, for 0-hour workers, they are eligible to receive statutory sick pay, provided they meet the criteria of being classed as an employee and also earn at least £118 per week in the relevant period before the absence has started. So if the 0-hour worker is eligible to receive statutory sick pay, this will be paid through the payroll. If they are not, again, similarly to those who are on the 12-week isolation period, they may also be able to claim universal credit if they can't qualify for statutory sick pay. Question 6. I understand that it was employers with a head count of fewer than 250 employees that could reclaim back the SSP from the government. Has that now been increased? So as of yesterday, when the support business guidance was updated on the HMRC website, the restriction was still on those employers who had fewer than 250 employees on the 28th of February. Again, if this does get updated, we'll make sure that we update our blogs and our articles in line with these changes. The next question, and the final question for statutory sick pay, is, are there any plans to relax the universal credit strict earnings criteria for those who work in care homes, who work extra shifts due to staff shortages? Now, at the minute, the government hasn't made any announcements around this and what the impact is of those additional hours on universal credits. So if this does impact you and you feel that the additional hours you have worked will impact the amount of universal credit that you could receive, the best advice I can give you is to call the HMRC and just clarify. Now, I've answered the questions that have been submitted before the session, so I'm going to take a look at some of the questions that you've submitted. Now, I am conscious that the session does end at 12:30. I'm more than happy to stay on a little bit longer and answer some questions, but if we don't get an opportunity to answer all of the questions we've received, I will respond to them offline. So let's just take a look at our questions. So the first question that we have is from Cheryl. Do you have to hold a consultation if you are putting 4 colleagues on a period of furlough leave? So in answer to this, the furlough, again, is something that the employee doesn't need to accept. So what you will need to do is you will need to communicate to the employees who are going to be impacted by furlough leave. And if they then come back to you and say they do not want to be put on a period of furlough leave, you are then going to have to look at the options, the other options around this, which may include laying the employee off or following the statutory redundancy process. So the consultation will only be required for furlough if the employee decides that they do not want to be on a period of furlough leave. So the next question is from Jerry. What support is there for people who joined our company in early March? So as the furlough scheme does not extend to anyone who joined your business after the 28th of February, the options available to you will be either to continue to pay the employee in line with the contractual processes that you have in place, or potentially explore the layoff process, or failing that worst case scenario, the redundancy consultation process. The next question is from Nichola regarding staff not on the payroll from the 28th of Feb. So yes, if the staff who have joined after the 28th of Feb, yes, you can furlough them, so you can put them on a period of unpaid leave. However, you won't be able to reclaim the wages from the HMRC. So it would then, I suppose, be up to you whether or not you would leave them as unpaid, or you would have a contractual provision in place so that the employee still received some pay. The next question is from David, and it says, hi, what is the pension position for furloughed employees? Okay, so pension will continue to be deducted, and it will be based on your qualifying earnings. So if your earnings reduce as a result of the furlough payment because your employer isn't topping up pay, then it can be assumed that your pension contributions would reduce as well, but they will still continue to be paid. Can we increase salaries so they receive the maximum support? So the HMRC guidance actually stipulates that the earnings that you should use for the claim are the earnings as of the payroll that contained the 28th of February. So increasing the employee's salaries may not then be taken into account by the HMRC. However, you can top up your employees on top of the 80% the HMRC provide, so that they do receive full pay. Okay, the next question is, do you have any guidance from the HMRC regarding furloughed employees and second jobs? We have had to furlough staff. Can they go get a temporary job elsewhere? Yes, so the actual process of furlough is only going to be applicable for the role that the employee holds with you. So if the employee has 2 jobs and they have only been furloughed in one, they can continue working at the second job. The next question, the next payroll date is in the new tax year. Will furloughed workers' payments be covered by the tax-free allowance? So there will be no changes to how the tax-free allowance works, in that if you are a monthly payroll, the allowance will be divided by 12 and they will get a proportion of it every month. Any earnings above this will still be taxed, even if they are relating to furlough payments. The next question is from Patrick on how to furlough an employee. Is there anything to do in anticipation of the scheme being set up by the HMRC? So I think there are a few things that you could do. One is certainly compile a list of those employees that you are going to place on a period of furlough leave. In addition to that, because we now know that it is gross pay and the HMRC are going to cover the national insurance for employers and the employer minimum pension contribution, you could also start compiling what those costs look like at the 28th of February, ready for this to be uploaded into the HMRC new portal when it is up and running. The next question is, our workers will be getting pay rises in line with the changes to minimum wage from the 1st of April. Will HMRC cover this as their monthly pay will be higher than February payroll? So I did cover this in one of the questions, but just to recap, because I feel this is quite important, minimum wage is only applicable for hours that are actually being worked by the employee. As a result, it is possible for the HMRC to reimburse you a cost for an employee that is below the national minimum wage. Okay, the next question is from Zach. Can my staff start a brand new second job if they are furloughed? Okay, so we have already covered this question, but just to recap, yes, they can start a second job, and the furlough is only applicable for the employment they have with you. The next question is from Maggie. How long will it take for the HMRC to pay over the 80% to employers? At the moment, we don't know, and I wouldn't like to give an estimate, unfortunately. But as soon as we know, we will update the information that we have posted on our blog and our LinkedIn articles to keep you up to date. The next question is from an anonymous attendee, topping up salaries. Do we have to top up the same across all the impacted employees, or can we just top up for certain employees? My concern with choosing which employees you top up would be that you would risk potentially opening yourselves up to almost discriminating against a group of employees. However, because this is more an employment query than a HMRC or a payroll one, I think the best thing I could advise you to do is maybe speak with ACAS to see how they feel about that or what their view is on topping up certain employees. Okay, we do still have quite a lot of questions, so I'm going to go through another 2 or 3 more, but I will respond to the rest offline. So we have 2 questions from Charlotte. The first one is, if an employee is coded as SSP relating to COVID-19 leave, can they be topped up with OSP? And also, does PayFit support the top up? Yes, so anybody that is on a period of SSP relating to COVID-19 leave can be topped up using the OSP functionality within the PayFit app, and you will still be able to reclaim the maximum 2 weeks for the employees if you hit the eligibility criteria for the statutory sick pay reclaim. Let's have a look. So the next question is from Emily. Oh, again, do you know how long it will take the HMRC to send the money? Again, we don't. What we do know, though, is that the scheme is being backdated to the 1st of March. So if you have furloughed your employees as of the 1st of March, you will be able to claim back to this date. The final question that we will look at before we take the rest offline is from Zach. Are attachment of earning orders applicable on furlough payments? I'm not entirely sure, if I'm being honest with you, Zach, but I can certainly find out for you. I do think I did read something about potentially those who have child maintenance orders being able to have those stopped temporarily if they are impacted earnings-wise by COVID-19. But again, I will follow up on that one and I will let you know. Okay, so we do still have quite a lot of questions to go through, but I will take them offline because I am conscious that we have run over slightly. But I do hope that this has been really helpful for you. We are continuously updating our blog and sharing articles on the latest payroll topics on our LinkedIn pages, so please be sure to check those out. You may even find the answers to some of your questions on there. And again, for those questions that I haven't had a chance to answer, I will answer them offline. And for everybody that attended today, thank you very much for taking the time. And I wish you the best of luck with running your payrolls for the next few months. Thank you.